Hey, what's happening, guys? Derek here from Simply Home. I'm the broker for the entire state of Michigan. I've got an all-star team of agents. So whether you're looking to buy, sell, invest, rent, whatever you need, we've got you covered. So this is one of the more popular videos that I do. I try and do one every year. It's regarding cost of living in the Detroit area. And I want to update that every year things change. So people need to know kind of what to expect when they're looking to buy or sell a home in our area. So let's jump right in. And since costs are fluctuating all over the place on everything right now, this one's especially important. So let's just start with gas prices, because that's something that is kind of on the forefront of everybody's mind. So right now, as of today, this is the beginning of May 2025. The average price for a gallon of gas in the Metro Detroit area is $3.11. So for this video, I'm gonna compare it to a couple different cities. I picked Dallas just because it's a city that's kind of similar in size, general-ish price point. It's not the highest end city in the country. It's not the lowest end, but it's just to give a comparison between our two metro areas. And then we've got a lot of people actually investing and even people moving into our market from New York City, so I'm going to include that as well. So that being said, our gallon of gas is $3.11. That's 2.3% below the national average. Now, it's a little bit less expensive in Dallas. A gallon of gas is $2.93 right now, but in New York, it's like $4.02. And I was out in Portland a couple of months ago, in Oregon, and I think I paid almost $5 a gallon. So in the grand scheme of things, I know a lot of that has to do with like gas taxes, state by state, things like that. And obviously Texas is a major oil producer, so maybe that factors into their having a little bit lower price. I'm not sure, but that's where we're at for gas right now. And then as far as groceries, that's kind of a hard one to really give a firm number on, because so much of it depends on where you shop, what you buy, how many people in your family. I've got 4 kids and a wife and a dog, so I'm sure my grocery bill is considerably higher than a lot of people, especially if you live by yourself, And, obviously if you go to Aldi or, is going to be significantly cheaper than if you go to, Kroger or Meijer, which are the two main grocery store chains here in Detroit. And if you go to Whole Foods, it's going to be even more expensive. So that being said, our cost of groceries here in Metro Detroit, just generally speaking per person, is about 1.5% higher than in Dallas, but it's 25.8% lower than if you're buying the same groceries in New York City. One massive advantage that we have here in Detroit, and I'm sure other cities have things that are similar, I don't know for a fact because I've never been to them, but here in Detroit, downtown, we've got Eastern Market, which is phenomenal. I probably should do a video just on Eastern Market. It's open every Saturday, and I believe every Tuesday as well. And that you're basically buying things wholesale there, and it's gigantic. We're talking like several football fields worth of vendors, and it's just a really cool place to go. I took the kids down there last weekend, and it's basically wholesale, so you're getting your produce and everything for half the price of what it would cost in a grocery store. So if you're looking to cut down on costs, get a lot of variety, have a really cool experience, Eastern Market is definitely a place I recommend going to on the weekends. And then as far as utilities, that's a little bit easier to quantify. And so we're going, the average cost for consumers for electric, gas, water, cooling, heating, and trash removal. So we're going to include that all as utilities. So the average cost in Metro Detroit for utilities is $251.12 per month. And one thing I wasn't really expecting was for the utility costs in Detroit to be more than in other cities, which apparently it is. And I'm thinking some of that has to have to do with heating costs, because I know, obviously Dallas isn't going to get as cold as Detroit by a lot. And I know New York gets definitely has their cold days, but I think being on the coast, being on the ocean, must moderate their climate a little bit to the extent where they probably don't pay quite as much for heating as we would here in the Midwest. So, but that being said, the average utility price here is $251.12. In Dallas, it's $227.04. So it's like 10.5% less than what you would expect to pay for utilities here in Detroit. And in New York City, it's even less. We're looking at $186.07 per month, 35% less than in Detroit. But don't get too used to that, because that's about the only metric that's going to be cheaper in New York than it will be in Detroit. And with utilities, I wasn't including, I'm sure you noticed, I wasn't including like cable and internet. So the way that breaks down, the average price in Metro Detroit for internet is $52.78 a month. It's going to be a little bit more expensive in Dallas. We're looking at $72.32 a month. That's 27% higher. And then in New York, we're looking at $62.23 a month, which is 16% higher than in what you'd expect to pay in Detroit. And while we're on the subject of utilities and things like that, let's talk about the water system. I haven't done a ton of research on other cities' water systems. I think I remember seeing like New York's comes from like the Hudson River, like way upriver in upstate New York. And I'm not sure about Dallas at all, where their water typically comes from. Here in Detroit, our water system, the source of it is Lake Huron. So it and the city of Detroit is like basically controls the water and sewers department in Detroit, supplies water to most of the different municipalities around town here, and in fact, like in a lot of the state as well. I know it's not as, I think there's still an ongoing issue in Flint, but the problem that started in Flint with the water there is when they switched off of the Detroit water system and they started drawing water from the Flint River, and it was a whole thing. I think a lot of the plumbing there has been repaired and replaced, but I don't think all of it has. And in fact, even in Metro Detroit around here, the state of Michigan did pass a grant. Basically, any lead line in the state eventually over the course of, I think, 10 years is going to be replaced. So I know in Ferndale, where we are, I think that's done now. For the last couple of years, they've actually gone, and any place that has a lead line, and they've replaced it with copper. In fact, my house, like when I bought my house, it had a lead line, and that was one of the things I made the sellers do before we closed on it, was replace our line with copper. And the city came in and still replaced our copper line with the copper line. So go figure. But I know in the city of Detroit, a lot of the houses are older and have lead lines still, but those will be being replaced. I mean, it's going to take a while because it's a lot of dwellings, and it just takes a long time to replace that many housing units, with the line. But realistically, that whole process, it's only like a 2 or 3 hour job. It's not as long as you would expect it to be. And so eventually here, every home in the metro area for sure is going to have, you're not going to have to worry about lead in the water. But as far as that goes, overall, that being said, like our water quality is always ranked among the highest in the country. So as far as that goes, like we're kind of blessed with an abundance of fresh water here, obviously. Being surrounded by 20% of the fresh water in the entire world here in Michigan. So that's, something that we kind of take for granted as well, because, it was kind of eye-opening. I went to college out in Arizona. I lived in Phoenix for 5 years, and water is it's a huge deal there, because, the Southwest has been in a drought for so long. But even when it wasn't, water scarcity is always something on the back of people's minds. And in fact, like out west, I know most of the water supply out on the western half of the U.S. is drawn from just mountain runoff. So if it doesn't snow, you can get into a situation where eventually you're going to potentially run out of water. And I think the water management that they've done out west has kind of mitigated a little bit of the issue. But I know, if this drought keeps going on, who knows how long how long they have. I think they had some pretty heavy rainfall a couple years ago and some decent snowfall. So I think a lot of the reservoirs like Lake Powell and Lake Mead out on the California, Nevada, Arizona border are kind of refilled. Or they're not back to where they should be, but they're not. It's not like some hypercritical water management thing at this point. But that being said, that's just nothing that we ever had to worry about. I never even thought about it until I moved out there, and it was a whole nother thing. But being from Michigan, it's the Great Lakes state. It's one thing that we're definitely blessed with, and something that we don't really have to worry about that much, because just fresh water is abundant here, and not everybody can say that. But enough about water. Let's get into everybody's favorite topic, taxes. So we're going to talk about a couple different taxes just so you can kind of see how we compare to a couple other cities. In Michigan, the state sales tax is 6%. I think that's kind of in the middle of the pack nationally, but the cities that we're comparing it to both have higher state sales tax. In Texas, it's 8.25%, and in New York City, it's 8.875%. So I know one of the reasons why the sales tax is higher in Texas is I don't think they don't have a state income tax, so they have to offset it somehow. But in the grand scheme of things, your sales tax is going to be a little bit less here in Michigan than it will be in a lot of other states. And then for income tax, Michigan has a flat income tax of 4.25%. And like we just talked about, Texas just doesn't have one at all. They still have a national income tax, just not a state one. And then in New York, it kind of depends. They have kind of a convoluted way to calculate taxes. But depending on your income level and filing status, you're going to pay anywhere from 4 to 10.9% in state income tax. And then as far as property tax goes, that's always a little bit of a tricky one no matter where you are, because a lot of it depends on the city. Like here in Ferndale, I believe we got the third or fourth highest property tax rate in all of Oakland County. But we also have excellent city services, so it's one of those things where you get what you pay for. But the average for the Metro Detroit area on property taxes, or the median anyway, is 1.43% of the property value. Now, it's going to be a little bit higher in Dallas. It's 1.72%. And in New York, it's actually quite a bit lower. It's 0.88%, so less than a percent. But that being said, I think you can figure that the average real estate price in New York City is just a tiny little bit higher than the average real estate price in Michigan. We're going to talk about that in a minute too. So even though the tax rate is lower, your total that you're paying is going to be higher just based off the sale price of the house. So then let's talk about housing costs so you can kind of see where we stack up. So the Metro Detroit area appreciated 3% year over year from May of 2024 until this May. So across the entire metro area in May of for basically 6 days ago, May of 2025, the median sale price was $285,000. And even though our housing costs have appreciated quite a bit over the past several years, we're still so much lower than most of the rest of the country. So like take Dallas, like I said, middle of the road metropolitan area. So our median sale price is $285,000. Theirs is $440,000. So your average house is going to cost 35.3% more in Dallas Metro than it will in Metro Detroit. And then New York, buckle up. The average sale price in New York City was $875,081. So that's 67.5% higher for the exact same house in New York City than you get in Metro Detroit. And then obviously we're going to focus on different types of housing because this is basically a real estate channel, and because housing is typically people's biggest expense or one of the biggest expenses. So if you're considering a move here, want to compare it, or considering a move somewhere else, and you want to be able to compare the prices here versus there. We're going to kind of dive a little bit deeper on cost to rent, cost to buy, different types of homes. So your average 2-bedroom apartment in Metro Detroit right now The average on that is $1,484 a month for a 2-bedroom. And, we can get down, depending on the area, I think the low end is about just around $1,000 a month. I mean, there's a couple spots around town where you could probably get under $1,000. Not sure that's somewhere you'd want to live, but you could. And the high end for a 2-bedroom is about $1,900 a month, and that would be kind of in the higher end, outer ring suburbs, maybe maybe in the Grosse Pointes, but typically you're not going to find too many apartments there. But you're going to be looking right around between $1,400, $1,500 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment right now. And then this is really where Metro Detroit becomes more affordable for people, because in Dallas, that same 2-bedroom apartment is going to cost you $1,850. So it's almost 20% higher. It's like 19.8% higher than you'd pay here. And I mean, everybody knows how expensive it is in New York, but a 2-bedroom apartment in New York City right now is $5,200 a month. So that's 71.5% higher than what you pay in Detroit. And when you increase it to a 3-bedroom apartment, those ratios stay about the same. So that 3-bedroom apartment in Detroit is going to be about $1,980 a month. And in Dallas, you're looking at $2,400 for the same place, so that's 17.5% higher. And then in New York, it's 70% higher. You're looking at almost $6,600 a month for a 3-bedroom. It'd be $6,583 is the exact average. So just astronomically high. But I mean, at the same time, then you get what you pay for because you live in New York. But if you're looking to not get gouged like crazy on your living costs, I mean, Detroit's definitely a very attractive place. So I think that's why we get, for being where we are, just a average city in the Midwest with a bit of a reputation, we still have a lot of people looking to move here just to cut down on costs. I mean, I don't think our reputation is very deserved, at least anymore. And, I mean, people that come here are shocked a lot of times when they see everything that we have to offer, especially this time of year when the lakes are not frozen over, and it's just it can be a really beautiful area too. So, and you're going to come here, you're going to save a lot of money. So that's definitely one of the things that attract buyers and investors to the area. I mean, there's no place else in around the United States where you can buy a brick 3-bedroom house, that's move-in ready for $65,000. You can do that here all day long. So that being said, I'm getting a little bit off track. So let's kind of like bring it back together and talk about the cost to purchase homes here in the Detroit area versus other cities around the country. So I know I just said you can buy a 3-bedroom brick move-in ready home for $65,000 here in Metro Detroit. That would be certain parts of the city of Detroit specifically. So let's talk about the metro area as a whole. The median cost of a 2-bedroom home that closed in April of 2024 was $215,720. That same 2-bedroom home, if you pick it up and stick it in Dallas, Texas, is going to be $270,000. So that's 20% higher than what you'd be paying here in Detroit. And then in New York, we're looking at $590,000. So that's 63.5% more than what you pay here in Detroit for the same property. And since 2-bedroom homes are typically less desirable than 3-bedrooms, when we get into that 3-bedroom home, so in Detroit it's going to cost you just under $281,000. So the median on that is $280,867. In Dallas, that's going to be $435,000. And then in New York, you're looking at $871,900, which is 67.8% higher for the exact same 3-bedroom home that you're going to get here in Detroit. And then kind of one last thing that I've been tracking, which kind of indicates that I think people overall are seeing more and more that there's value in relocating here to Detroit, Michigan, but Metro Detroit specifically, is that our rent prices have increased 7.3% from 2024 until now. They've actually gone down a little bit in Dallas. I know a lot of the Sunbelt areas right now are seeing kind of an influx of inventory. We haven't had that problem here in 5 or 6 years, but Texas doesn't seem to be getting hit as bad, but they're definitely they're kind of transitioning from a seller's market into a buyer's market, and supply and demand is kind of flipping. So the rent prices went down 1.5% in Dallas, Texas, and in New York, I mean, that's always going to be desirable. They've gone up 5.4%. So they've actually their prices have increased, but it's increased at a slower rate than what Detroit has, which is kind of surprising. So, but I think people see the value in what we have to offer here in this part of the country. So there's still people moving here. There's a lot of we've definitely diversified our industry. It's not all automotive now. We've got the two biggest mortgage companies in the United States. United Wholesale Mortgage is 15 minutes that way. Rocket Mortgage is 15 minutes that way. And between the two of them, they employ, I think, 15 or 20,000 people. I mean, they're huge companies. So, and then you've got all the the businesses that support the main businesses, just like with automotive. So, that being said, it's there is a lot going on here. In Detroit specifically, though, the riverfront is really being renovated nicely, and there's not too many places. It might be the only place in the country where we've got a maritime international border, and it's a cool place. You go, I take my kids. There's a splash pad down right at the end of Mount Elliott, and you can Canada's right there. It's really nice. The water's. Lake St. Clair, not the cleanest water in the world. That's kind of feeds the Detroit River, but all in all, the water quality of the Great Lakes has increased dramatically. Over a long period of time, last 40, 50 years, it's kind of like night and day. So it's a pleasant place to go. I mean, like anywhere you go, you can drive along the rivers and the lakes. I mean, there's a lot to see and do here. We've got 4.5 million people in our metro area, so it's really a pretty highly populated part of the country. So when you got that many people, there's all kinds of amenities. Right down the street, one of the only Peruvian restaurants in Michigan. I'm gonna walk to it from here. It's like the kind of things that you don't get in smaller towns, smaller areas. Like just one example there. But there's definitely reason why our cost is going up a little bit, but still in the grand scheme of things, we're so much more affordable than a lot of the country, at least in terms of housing. And it's one of those things where we're getting more and more popular as a tourist destination. I can't even tell you how many people I've talked to who friends told them to come here or whatever, and they did, and they can't believe what it's like here. They have a picture in their head of what it's going to be like, and then it's something completely different. So if that's you and you've never been to the Detroit area and you need pointers, places to go, things to do, things to see, I'm your guy. Give me a call anytime. You can call me directly, call or text at 586-491-5622. You can always email me, Werenka at simplyhome.com. I'm on all the socials. Just reach out. I'll respond quick. I'll give you accurate information. And as always, thank you so much for watching this channel. I love making this video because it's always good to see where we kind of stack up compared to other parts of the country in terms of our affordability, because it seems like we're kind of catching up in a couple categories, but with housing, even though our housing is appreciating, we're still so much more affordable than so many places around the country. It's pretty incredible. So again, thanks so much, guys. Anything I can do to help you out, just reach out anytime. We'll be back next week with another video. Until then, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.